Let's see, we left off here on page 154. We're going to start off here in verse 46, which is right here on this last paragraph here. And last time we were talking about how Satan's power was limited. At one time she had the power to create. Of course, she lost that. And then we also saw how the fact that she has her and all the angels that have followed her have damaged their minds and damaged their way of life. Okay? And mankind's followed the same thing. So continue on here in verse 46. It says, verse 10, it's needful, Pastor says, for him to accomplish what he wants to accomplish, for him to bring many sons to this authority. Now think about that. This authority that he's talking about is the same type of authority that Yeshua Messiah has, okay? To have this power. This is exactly why mankind was created, for this purpose, to bring this peace to the universe. If you remember, we left off a few days ago, he says, with Revelations 13. He says, I'd like you to go back there, what we brought out, and keep it in mind, that Yahweh has to allow this thing to come to pass. And remember, that's the reason why he says, the title of this, remember, is that it's needful. The tribulation is needful, okay? So it's needful. He has to allow Satan to have a way here on earth, along with her chosen men and women, to assist her in order for them to deceive man, okay? So Satan and the demons and those, remember, like it says, the men and women who are set there to deceive, who she uses, and you see plenty of examples of that in the scriptures where men and women were used to deceive others and were wicked, very wicked, like Jezebel, of course, being one of the women. And then, it says, I think it's in, I believe it's in Yahweh, where it says about how, there were wicked men who crept in unaware and so forth, even into the house of Yahweh to try and lead men away. Okay, and it's talking about it as being silly women and so forth. Okay, so these forbidden assemblies and stuff. So it says mankind will get lessons from this too. Okay, you're getting it because you're a witness to it. See, we're seeing these things take place. We're actually witnessing. Remember, it says this is a time period like no other. Okay, this is a time period that's never been in the history of mankind before. So we're actually witnessing all the things that's coming to pass at this time. And then notice it says Yahweh chose you and placed you in the breeding program. Okay, he chose you and placed you in the breeding program. As it says, he put us in this program. Okay, he knew us. And he knew much more about you than what you think he did, he says. He knew you before you were ever born, in fact. In 1 Thessalonians here, 2 verse 3. Can I get this heater turned off? Turn that off? It's tremendously hot up here. In 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 13, it says, we are obligated to always give thanks to Yahweh for you, brothers, who are beloved of him, notice, because Yahweh chose you as first fruits for salvation through sanctification by the Spirit and by the faith in the truth. Okay, so he made us to be sanctified, okay? And then notice in Romans 8, verse 28 and 29, he says, and we know that all things work together for the righteous to those who love Yahweh, for those who are the called out ones according to his plan. Now notice it says everything works together for the righteous. So Yahweh's in full control of everything that goes on. And for those whom he did foreknow, he did also foreordain to be conformed to the image of his Son, so that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. Okay, so he knew that we were going to be born. He knew that we would accomplish certain things in life. And so he says, moreover, those whom he did foreordain, those he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified. Okay, so we're going to take a look at some of these words here. The words, notice, ordain, foreknow, foreordained, if I can get that paper out of the way there. The word foreknow is number 4267. It means to know beforehand, because Yahweh knew us before. As it says, he knew us before we were even born. And it means to foresee. You know, he could foresee these things. He knew his plan. He could see his plan coming to pass. He knew these things beforehand. The word foreordained means to limit in advance. And it means to predetermine or determine beforehand. So Yahweh knew us before we existed in our fleshly bodies, of course, and he could foresee us in his plan before he created man on earth. And he has limited mankind and, of course, made him a little bit lower than the Malachim, but he's ordained them to have greater glory than the Malachim themselves. And that's, of course, told to us in Psalms 8. And they will be the servants of mankind throughout all eternity, as the saints will rule the universe in true Ahab. And, of course, ruling, you know, part of that ruling as well is going to be the judging of them, okay? You're going to actually be able to you're going to have the authority and the responsibility actually to judge them. You remember what we saw last week, kind of the fact that you actually be able to be breeding the Malachim, okay, to do certain things, to help out in certain jobs and so forth. So back in the book here, he says he knew much more about you than what you think. He knew you before you were ever born. That's mind-boggling when you think about it. Highlight this the next sentence here. You are very privileged to be called of Yahweh, to be given the opportunity to be a part of this great glory and honor that Yahweh has in his plan that he has established for this to take place. Highlight all of that. You're very privileged, of course, to be called out. And as it says, those who he called out, he called out to be a part of his family. It's nothing to take lightly, for sure. And then continue on, he says, he has put in you to actually see and have an understanding of this without having to experience it, okay? We can see these things, and he's put these things within us. For reference, think of Psalm 111, verse 10. He says, the reverence of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom and a great understanding. Okay, he's given us that understanding, as it says, for all those who do his laws. Then Ephesians 5:17, it says, therefore do not be unwise, but understanding what the will of Yahweh is. Okay? And remember the example of Yeshua. He says, not my will be done, but yours. So he submitted to the will of Yahweh. And, of course, that's how he was found perfect in the eyes of Yahweh, because he submitted to everything that he had said. Okay, back in the book here, he says, right now, with the knowledge that you have, and highlight these next two sentences, you can actually see that fornication will bring diseases. That is the reason you want to avoid fornication. Not only does it bring diseases, it breeds hatred between men and women, and it causes divorce and separations and hatred between brothers and a non-trust there. Okay? Highlight all of that. So we can actually see these things. We can see the results of these things. Now, Yeshua, for your reference note, Luke 16:18. In the 16:18, now, each one of these verses, Luke 16:18 is your reference, but these other two verses go right along with it. And if you notice, they all have a little bit something, they each add something else to it. Luke 16:18, whoever divorces his wife, if she marries another, she commits adultery. Okay? And whoever marries her who is divorced from her husband commits adultery. So if they're divorced and they go out, well, they're committing adultery. Okay? And that's what the whole world is experiencing at that time. Matthew 5:32, Yeshua said, however, I say to you that everyone that divorces his wife, except on the account of fornication, makes her a subject for adultery. So now this puts emphasis on the man. Okay, what he does is if he puts her out there, he makes her a subject for adultery. Seeing that whoever marries her, such a divorced woman, commits adultery. And Matthew 19:9 says, and I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for the cause of fornication, If she marries another, she commits adultery. And also, he who marries her who is divorced commits adultery. Now, if you notice, the stipulation was about fornication, okay? And, of course, that's both physical and spiritual. In other words, the law stipulated that if a woman appeared to be a certain way, okay, if she appeared to be a virgin and she appeared to be a righteous woman and deceived the man, and he come to find out that she had played the harlot and she was playing around him and so forth, cheating on him and all that kind of stuff, he had the right to put her away and stuff. And, of course, fornication being the spiritual, if he found out, of course, that she was a God worshiper and can't live with her, then that was another reason and so forth. So that's why Yeshua said these things. But the fact is that as it shows here, the fornication brings diseases, but it also breeds this hatred between man and women, okay, men and women, and it causes divorce and separations and hatred and so forth. And so this is the way of Satan, because Yahweh said in the beginning, as it says, you married to someone, you married forever. In the beginning it wasn't so. Yahweh didn't say separate and so forth. So continue on here. He says, you know in your heart that you cannot trust this person, and Yahweh knows it too. Okay, he knows it too. The only thing with mankind is you suffer it, and you go on, and you try to live through it. It's a bitter struggle. Okay, it's a bitter struggle. And if you remember too, for one of your reference sources, you could put 1 Corinthians 6, verses 9 through 11. Because that's what it says, you're not going to inherit the kingdom of Yahweh if you commit fornication. And it says to glorify Yahweh in your body, okay? Because your body was meant to glorify Yahweh. It wasn't meant to go out and commit sin against him and against others and get involved in these things, because you just tear up your body and you tear up your mind. And that's not loving yourself. If you can't love yourself, you can't love your neighbor, right? Because you must love your neighbor as yourself. So it's all focused upon keeping the laws of Yahweh, and that's where everything in your life revolves around. Continue on, he says, the only thing with mankind is you suffer it and you go on and you try to live through it. It's a bitter struggle sometimes in trying to cope with the ways of the world. This is what we're learning now. Mankind is learning it the hard way, but you can see it in the scriptures and believe. Okay, highlight this next section. Yeshua spoke of those who believe without seeing. The only way you can do this is to read and say, I know this way is right, and this is the way I'm going to follow. Okay? Yeshua spoke of those who believe without seeing, and the only way you can do that is to read and to say, I know this way is right, and this is the way I'm going to follow. And you keep that positive attitude, okay? And you keep your own guard to make sure that you don't mess up in any way. He said it's kind of like eating salt for your health. And you remember Yahweh says in his law, he says every sacrifice. Remember Romans 12, 1 and 2 says your bodies must be living as a living sacrifice to Yahweh. And then in Yahweh's law, he says every sacrifice must be salted, okay? And so salt is healthy. He says it's kind of like eating salt for your health. All the world is saying, don't eat salt. And I'm saying to you, salt is healthy for you. You need it in your diet. You need it in your diet. Okay, a reference source for that is Luke 14:34, because this is what Yeshua said. In Luke 13:34, Yeshua said, salt is perfect in form and nature. But if the salt has lost its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? Okay, so and remember, he also said you must have salt within yourselves, right? So he says it's perfect in form and nature. Okay, in the form, okay, the very interesting part about salt is that the atoms that make up the salt's atomic lattice are arranged in a cubic square. Okay, and that, of course, results in the salt crystals being square. Okay, and shape, salt is an ionic compound made of sodium and chloride atoms, and when a number of these molecules get together to form a crystal, they tend to arrange themselves in a cubic pattern. And so therefore, when you look at salt under a microscope, you will see cubes. Okay, they're broken down into cubes, even down to the atomic level. Okay? He says it's perfect in form and in nature. Well, in the course of nature, our bodies need salt to stay, of course, in a healthy state. You've got to have salt. A cell that lacks salt is subject to disease. And then, of course, he said, how can it be made salty again? Well, salt is what's called hygroscopic, which means it actually attracts and holds the water molecules from the surrounding environment around it. And so when it is on a humid day, that's why salt will clump. It's absorbing the water. And while the water molecules, they actually tend to pull the sodium and the chloride apart, okay? And it breaks the ionic bond that holds them together. And that's what occurs whenever you put salt in water and you stir it up, and this is how it begins to separate and so forth. Okay, so he talks about the importance of salt, okay? Because salt binds, okay, and it binds things together as well. And that's the important reason of why he gives us that reminder of unity, once again, in his law when he says, salt every sacrifice, okay? Plus, salt just tastes great, don't it? Man, things are just bland without it, you know. Okay, so he says, the next verse here, he says in the book, he says, I promise to mention, do not cook honey. You're not to cook honey. I still have not covered that thoroughly in detail, but don't cook honey. It putrefies when you cook it. The Hebrews who know this, many of them are involved in medicine and pharmaceuticals, and they will not use honey because of the heating process that goes into their medicines and drugs. It putrefies. It's a poison. It puts off fumes that will actually enter your body and cause damage, okay? Actually cause damage. The law for that is found in Leviticus 2:11, where it says, no grain offering you bring to Yahweh shall be made with leaven, for you shall burn no leaven nor any honey in any offering made by fire. Okay, so Yahweh says don't burn honey. Now here's reasons why. The reason why you should never cook honey. Okay, according to the National Center for Biotechnology, heating honey causes adverse effects. Cooking it actually deteriorates the quality and loses its essential enzymes and nutrients. But when cooked, honey becomes equivalent to glue. The molecules tend to adhere to mucous membranes in the digestive tract, further producing toxins, which become the root and cause of ill health. Okay? And so Yahweh knew what he was talking about when he said, don't cook honey. Another interesting fact is, you know that in the wintertime, bees survive off winter. In wintertime, bees survive off the honey, right? They eat the honey in the hive. Well, it's known that honey in the food is winter food for bees. However, if you heat the raw honey and you feed it back to bees, you can kill the bees. Okay? So even the bees. So I think if we know, the ancients knew that they saw this, that if the bees themselves died, it probably ain't too healthy for mankind either, right? So stay away from those things. Okay, let's get back to the book here. He says, and this is in verse 51, honey is very healthy for you, okay? Now you see how they talked about how it becomes toxic? It's the same thing that Pastor said here when he says it becomes poison. You notice he says it putrefies, and it's a poison. And you can find some places that they do say it is poison. But honey is very healthy for you. It's very healthy for infants, you know. Honey is very helpful for you. You remember the reference source for that? Remember Proverbs 24, verse 13 says, honey is beneficial, right? It's beneficial for the body. But there's an old wives' tale that tells you, don't feed it to infants. Said, I saw a label on honey the other day that said, don't feed honey to infants until they reach 3 years old. He says, this is stupidity and ignorance, as well as unscientific. Immediately when my children were born, we fed them honey. You know, that's one thing, is people, you can put honey in water if you're going to feed them water, you know, and mix it in there and give it to them. It's very nutritious for a baby. Because honey, you know, honey is one of the substances that really don't go bad, you know. I mean, they've found honey that was thousands of years old. As long as it's sealed and in the container, it's edible. and you can eat it. It doesn't go bad, okay? And honey also is one of the known substances that contains everything that you need to keep you alive, okay? It's found in honey. So he says, immediately when my children were born, we fed them honey. It starts them off correctly. You don't want to feed them a bunch of it because it will make them vomit. You know how I know that, he says? Because the scripture says it. One of the wisest men who ever lived told his son, son, don't overeat honey. It will make you vomit. And it will. And of course, in Proverbs 25, verse 16 and 27 is where that's found, where it says, don't eat too much honey because it will make you vomit. Okay? And it does, because it's too much. It's too rich for your system and so forth. And of course, when you vomit, that means your body is rejecting something because it doesn't need it. Okay? It doesn't want it. And so it gets rid of it. Continue on here in verse 52. Now, King Solomon supposedly wrote that, or possibly it was one of the doctors who worked with him. He got the credit for it, though. He says, like I do on a lot of this. When you see the prophetic word is bright and shiny with all my misspellings corrected. It says, I'm the poorest speller in the world. He said, well, next to the stupid computer that has the spell check on it, you run my work through this computer and it can't catch my words either. The Okie words are far above any computer. I guarantee you that, he says. We create new words. The secretaries say, there's no such word. I say, there is now. There is now. You ever do that? You ever think of a word and it's like, how do you spell that? You look it up, you can't find it in a dictionary because it ain't in there. But you know what it means because, you know, these words stick with you. And it's what did he say recently? He said something about I don't know if he said we unglorify ourselves or something like that. You know, it's like, but we know, you know, when you look at those words, you know it means the opposite of something, you know, and just like sin is opposite of righteousness and so forth. And so we know these things. But that's the great wisdom of Yahweh, because he always speaks, you know, he speaks in Okie terms, you know, where you can understand these things. So he says, it's needful for us to see this tribulation that is coming. It's needful for the universe, for the Malachim, for the billions and billions and trillions of beings who are living out there. But I thought we were the only ones. Isn't Earth the only place? You know, when the scientists and the astronomers and stuff say that stupidity like that, what are they doing? They're making themselves into gods, like as if man's the only thing, that's the only created being that's out there, you know, and there's nothing else but this whole big old empty universe. You know, they show their stupidity when they say that kind of stuff. But because they don't believe in the scriptures, okay? They don't believe in the scriptures. So that foundation's not in the scriptures, so therefore they can't believe it. It's needful for them to watch this program taking place. He says, I know, now remember this program is what's going on right now. Our lives is being revealed. Remember, we're on the outside of the planet, so all the other beings can see what's going on and so forth. And it's being broadcast of what we do. He says, I know that Yahweh has television sets in every household there exists out there, that they pay attention, and he insists that they pay attention to everything that is taking place here on earth. You think they got, you know, I look at it this way, okay? The house of Yahweh is the true reality show, okay? Reality shows are really big in the world. But the house of Yahweh is the true reality show, you know? It's what the whole universe is actually watching. He says, somewhere or another, he's broadcasting this to them. They will be able to see what fornication, adultery, and trespassing causes, and the hatred that will lead to wars that will end it all. Okay, but of course, that's going to be, as it says, the works of the flesh. You know, in Galatians 5:19 through 21, the works of the flesh is all found in those things. That's what it's going to lead to. And when it says Yahweh has television sets out there, another reference source you can use too to see that is in 1 Corinthians 4:9, because it says, but instead it seems to me that the Yahweh has put us apostles on display, okay, like men condemned to death, who have been made a spectacle to the whole world. That word world actually means universe. to Malachim as well as men. So, Yahweh's plan was before the universe, before he even created all its inhabitants, are watching us. And they're watching us overcome, okay? They're watching to see what we're doing. Because remember, they're waiting on us. They're waiting on the sons of Yahweh to be revealed, to see these things. Okay, highlight this next verse here. It says, these will darken the world. He's talking about these wars now. These will darken this whole earth to where there will be no hope of life left before Yahweh allows to take over and start cleaning it up. So it's going to darken these wars, or darken the whole earth to where there will be no hope of life left before Yahweh actually allows us to take over and start cleaning this up. Okay, and that's what Yeshua talked about, the darkening of the sun. That the sun will not give her light. Okay, he says, this will take you, even with all your powers, even when you receive the powers that he wants you to have, okay, this will take you, even with all your powers, 1,000 years. It's still going to take you 1,000 years to bring the earth back, okay? Now, Yahweh could do it in one day, right? But he's going to give us 1,000 years and teach us 1,000 years to take our time and this is when we're really going to be learning how things are working and why Yahweh made certain things. Now think about this, all this radiation and stuff. There's things already that Yahweh has made that would take care of these things, okay? Like sunflowers and certain things like that, certain plants and so forth will actually take care of these things. Of course, there's also microbes that will eat radiation, okay? They will eat the radioactive stuff. And the amazing thing is, they can eat the radioactive, and of course they've got to eliminate. So when they eliminate, what they eliminate is non-radioactive. They'll actually eat this as their food and get rid of it, but the benefit will be that they will actually produce something that will be healthy for mankind. So it's going to take you, he says, yes, it will take you 1,000 years to actually clean this earth up from what mankind and his rebellion against Yahweh's laws is going to do. And that's found in Revelations 20, 1-2, verses 1 and 2, and 4 and 6, when he talks about the 1,000 years. So that's a reference there for you. Now in Revelations 13, it says we see this beast here. We see this dragging is ruling it. It's necessary that Yahweh allows Satan and her demons to teach mankind this desirable way. It looks so desirable to the carnal mind that they cannot see past what one stupid minute is going to bring. Because their carnal mind is blinded. All they see and think about is the pleasures of life, okay? And that's why it says in Proverbs 3, don't lean on your own understanding, right? Don't lean on your own understanding because it's wrong. You're not going to be making the right choices if you do that. You've got to rely upon Yahweh's laws. He says, I've always said to you that, highlight this part, experience is a teacher, but not as great of a teacher as reading and believing, okay? Experience is a teacher, but not as great of a teacher as reading and believing, okay? You can read it, you can believe it, you can put your trust in Yahweh and know that it's going to be exactly the way that Yahweh said it's going to be. And that's believing without seeing. He says, I've seen farmers go broke trying to experiment themselves. The government spent billions of dollars experimenting for the farmer, telling him what will work in this area in raising chickens, pigs, cattle, dogs, or whatever. He says you can get books at the library and read up on anything. Before you put a chicken on your plate, you can plan and know exactly what to do to keep that chicken healthy. He says it's a little different now when I was a child and keeping chickens, dogs, or anything else healthy because of the environment, of course. The environment, right? The firmament is defiled and so forth. The earth is so defiled right now that no matter where you raise puppies, they will either get distemper or hookworm. This shows you how that is spreading. In the late 70s, I saw money in raising dogs. He says, I wanted to be the best breed and wanted them to do what I wanted them to do perfectly. I studied to bring the breeding program about. I had it established. I wanted a certain long ball mouth when they would get on the trail. Then I wanted one that would chop at the tree. All this can be done in the breeding. You can breed a dog to do all of this. You can breed a dog to point at a bird, and that's what they're supposed to do. You can get that breeding wrong, and if you do, then of course he says he will go in and try to grab the bird. If you don't train him properly, he will go in and try and grab the bird, or he won't want anything to do with the bird. After that, he's not a bird dog. Okay, he's just a plain dog. But you have to breed it into him by taking certain genes here and certain genes there and putting them together, he says, and you can do this. And that is really amazing, because that's what mankind has learned. Now, these types of things is not forbidden by Yahweh's law. Okay, it's not mixing. It's not an unlawful mix to do these types of things. It's simply the way that Yahweh made things. Now he says, Yahweh has done the same thing with you, and that is why you are here. He's done the same thing with you, okay? He's had a breeding program with you, and that's how you ended up in the house of Yahweh. You think you just read something or thought about coming to the house of Yahweh and liked to hear the preacher talk, and you ended up staying, you know? No, Yahweh brought you here to his house, okay? In Ephesians 1, 4, and 5, he says, because he chose us with him before the foundation of the world, and that we were to be sacred and without blame before him in Ahab, preordaining us to be his children by adoption. Remember, we have to do it through adoption because his original family left him. They turned against him, became the gods and the demons. By adoption, through Yahshua Messiah, according to the righteous pleasure of his plan. Notice, everything is according to his plan. Now it says he chose us in verse 4. That word chose, number 1586, it means to select or to pick out. He picked us out of this whole world. This is how special you are. In the word world is number 2889. It means the universe. So he preordained us to be his children. Okay? And preordained, of course, is number 4309. So before the foundation of the universe, Yahweh knew you. He had already had you picked out already. Before you were ever born, before any certain parts of the universe were even created, you were already in his plan already. Preordained. He preordained us to be his children. It's number 4309. It means to limit or to mark out beforehand. Well, of course, we have the mark of Yahweh, right? It means to design definitely beforehand. Well, didn't we just read about didn't that what the passage just said about the breeding program with these dogs? He had us designed definitely before we were ever born, okay? Beforehand, as it says. Notice that word design in Webster's dictionary. The word design means to create, to fashion, to execute or construct according to plan. Okay? So it was according to Yahweh's plan that we were designed. To conceive, to plan out in the mind. Okay? Yahweh had us in his mind before we were ever born. And to have as a purpose, to devise for a specific function. Okay? He knew what he had in mind for us, what purpose he was going to create mankind. And he told the whole universe what he was going to do. And this word design, the archaic word, means to indicate with a distinctive mark, sign, or name. Okay? A distinctive mark, sign, or name. And of course, that's the mark of Yahweh. And remember 2 Timothy 2:19, nevertheless the foundation of Yahweh stands sure, having this seal. Yahweh knows those who are his, because everyone who reverences the name of Yahweh departs from iniquity. Okay? The King James, I always remember the King James because it says, whoever nameth the name. Okay? Nameth the name. And of course, name means name, authority, or character. In other words, those who take on the name, the authority, the character of Yahweh. Those are the ones that Yahweh claims as his own children. Okay? That's my people, he says. Okay? So let's get back in the book here. So Yahweh's done the same thing with you, and that's why you're here. He says, I did this myself and brought this about in this program. I had demands for these dogs before they were ever born. We couldn't breed them fast enough. I quit because it was taking too much of my time. I wanted to put all of my time into the house of Yahweh, which is what I have done. So, he could have been very successful, and he was very successful in this business, okay? And people from all over the states in the United States was wanting and ordering these dogs, and he would breed them and he would sell them and so forth. But he has that ability, he has that ability to be able, because this is what Yahweh put in him, to be able to be the overseer of the house of Yahweh, to be the king of this kingdom that is here on this earth. And so he has this ability to do this, and he would be very successful. Like even the bankers would say, you want to succeed in business, follow Bill Hawkins, okay? Because they knew that he had that key to success. He knew how to be able to do this. But you can see that money and fame and all this power and all this was nothing that he desired. He desired he knew that all power and authority came from Yahweh. And that's the righteous power and authority that he desired to go after, not from what man or what Satan could offer. Because remember, she did it to Yeshua. Look, all the kingdoms can be yours. All this power and authority and money and wealth and so forth can be yours. Just bow down to me and worship me, And, of course, he resisted. And Yisrayl Hawkins has done the same thing. His desire has always been to follow Yahweh. So he says, I had demands for these dogs before they were ever born. We couldn't breed them fast enough. I quit because it was taking too much time. I wanted to put all my time into the house of Yahweh, which is what I have done. I still own rent houses. I've never been able to get out of that, he says, but I don't have to spend any time in that because of the workforce that we have now. The money is used for the work to go into the work. That's the whole purpose why he had that. The building that you're sitting in right now, that's how this building was built, okay? Through the rent properties and stuff that Pastor had, all the house of Yahweh was built by that. Otherwise, you'd be sitting out in the middle of a field right now, okay? And this is what he continues to do. Everything that comes into the work of Yahweh, it goes right back into the work of Yahweh. Everything that can possibly be done. And how fitting it is that he provide houses for people as being the builder, of the house of Yahweh, So it's a fitting work that he had there, that Yahweh trained him in and allowed this to take place because, face it, when I came to the house of Yahweh, there wasn't very few people tithing. Tithe was something that, it's in the law of Yahweh, but yet sermons had to be brought in order for people to understand the importance of tithing and to tithe, And so, if no one's tithing, how is all this done? Pastor would feed the flock on Sabbath. He would provide all of this stuff for them. He wanted to make the Sabbath a very enjoyable day for people. Never asked a dime from anybody. No one ever had to pay for anything or nothing, So everything that goes out there now, that anything that is done, goes right into the work. And that's what he teaches us to do, is to put our efforts forth and to look at the importance of the work and to stay involved. He says it's not a burden like it was before when it used to take up all my time. He says, I sold 90-some houses in one day to try and get out of it. Because of brethren wanting houses, he says, I think it's accumulated again. He says, I permit certain buys to be made sometimes for the people. But it's not, if it wasn't for that, he says, I wouldn't even be in it. And he's not involved in those things today, In Revelations 13:4, he says, we see here a dragon, okay? We see this dragon. And notice, all the world worships the dragon. All the world is following this way of life that the dragon is presenting. In Genesis 1, Satan says, partake of this tree that Yahweh says you must not partake of. Okay, well, Genesis 1, the reference, of course, is Genesis 3, 1 through 7. But in Genesis 1, it shows what took place because of Satan and her family following this particular way. You see the results of what took place in Genesis 1:1, when the whole earth had been destroyed because of that. So it was this way of life. It doesn't show you there the amount of people on earth at that time. It doesn't show you the amount of people produced over 100 years from that time. The earth became populated. We know that from the little that has been written. It shows the sins that Adam and Eve committed are the same sins that are being committed today and that Christianity is doing today. So nothing has changed. The examples are still there. We see the fact that, even though it doesn't tell you the population, the amount of population, we know that there was a lot of people that was there because the scripture tells you that. It says in Genesis 5, verse 2, in the King James Version, it says, male and female created he them, and he blessed them, notice, and he called their name Adam in the day when they were created. Now, the book of Yahweh says, he created them male and female and blessed them and named them mankind in the day that they were created. Okay? Now, the word Adam is number 121. It's from 120. It means mankind. Okay? And of course, Adam's commission, you remember Genesis 1:28, is be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. And then you read later in Genesis 5, verse 4, that after Adam had begat Seth, the days of Adam were 800 years, and he begat other sons and daughters. Okay, so there was more children than just Cain and Abel and Seth. Okay, there were many, because their job was to fill the earth, to subdue the earth. Of course, that refers to the fact that it would take a long time according to Yahweh's plan, and that's actually going to be fulfilled when the sons and daughters of Yahweh are actually revealed. Then it will come to completion. Well, as he says here, that it shows the sins that Christianity is still doing today. It's a way of life. It's a way of life that Satan offered to this group. Not just Adam and Eve, but the whole congregation of people. There was a huge congregation of people alive at that time. Okay? And of course we see that, Abel was a righteous priest of Yahweh. Cain was a preacher of Satan. Okay? He chose Satan's way. And you see the fact that it says in Genesis 4 that when Cain and Abel had spread abroad, okay, and that word spread abroad means they had large groups of people, followers, and so to speak, underneath them, okay, that they were teachers of. Cain has his group, Abel had his group, okay, the righteous. And of course, that's, whether Cain actually did the actual slaying or he sent someone to do it, he's still responsible. He is the one who had done it. And so when Yahweh asked him, where is your brother? He said, well, am I my brother's keeper? Am I supposed to be guarding my brother? Well, yes, you are. Because that's your duty as a fellow man, is to love one another and to care for one another and keep watch over them. He said, never mind that, verse 63, never mind that. Limit yourself to Adam and Eve if you want to, he says. But it's the same sin that we have sinned. I highlight this. Sin is the breaking of Yahweh's law, okay? Sin is the breaking of Yahweh's law. We know that, as 1 Yahweh says that. See, that's the thing is, Yahweh doesn't leave anything out. He gives you the scriptural definition of sin. 1 Yahweh 3, verse 4. And he gives you the scriptural definition of righteousness, Deuteronomy 6:25. So you actually, there's no way that someone can say that they didn't know what sin was. Because in order to know what you're looking for, you have to look in the scriptures. And the scriptures gives you specific definitions on what is sin, what is righteousness. Sin is the breaking of the law. Righteousness is the keeping of the law. Well, if you break the law, you become evil as the gods. If you keep the law, then you become righteous as Yahweh is righteous. And if you are righteous as Yahweh is righteous, eventually he says, you will see him as he is, when you'll be made into the image and likeness of Yahweh himself. And that is something that's very well worth shooting for, don't you think? Okay. Continue on, he says, one prophet wrote, if I had hidden my sins as Adam did. And that reference source, the one who said it, was Yeshub. In Yeshub 31, or Eob 31:33, it says, if I have covered my transgression as Adam did, concealing my iniquity in my heart. And that's what Adam did. He concealed it. He tried to get out of it. He wanted to wiggle out of it. Well, that's the woman you gave me, man. She's the cause. She's the one who caused me to do it. Well, in Hosea 6:7, it says the same thing. But they, like Adam, have transgressed the covenant. There they dealt treacherously against me. Okay? And that's what Adam did. Adam transgressed. He sinned against the covenant. Remember, he had made the covenant with Yahweh. And Yahweh made covenant with mankind that you will be my people, if you do what I say to do. Because remember, what is the covenant? The covenant is that you tell Yahweh, I will keep your laws. If you keep your laws, then you have the right to call Yahweh your heavenly Father. And if you keep that, then Yahweh will keep his part and says, you are my children. And that's the covenant between you and Yahweh, is that you will keep his laws so that you have the right to call him your heavenly Father. Because only the obedient can call Yahweh their Father. Otherwise, what are you? You're a bastard. Exactly. And a bastard means someone without a father. You don't have Yahweh as your father. Okay? So that's the reason why he makes this covenant with mankind. So it says Adam was ashamed of what he did. They were ashamed of it in the Christian churches today. They're ashamed of what they're doing. And they're trying to make out like they are righteous. Like it says, but yet what do? Deny the authority thereof, right? They deny the authority of it, although they claim to be righteous. They created a place like Las Vegas where they don't want their politicians to go there. They don't want their politicians to go there. Well, why? Because they know it's evil. They know what is going on there is evil. They want to sneak in and have a convention there. And, well, while they're there, you know what goes on in Las Vegas. It goes on in every city. And what's the saying about Las Vegas? What goes on in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, right? So it goes on in the churches today. The sin is there. You see the men walking around looking at women up and down and see where their slits are, where they can take a peek. You see lust taking place. This is the same thing that was offered there. It was needful that Yahweh allowed this to take place. He has to have us tempted, He has to allow this because he wants to see which way are you going to choose. If you don't want to lust after someone, don't look at them. Plain and simple. Just don't look at them. You do not have to look at women. That's your choice if you do. If you don't want to lust at them, just don't look at them. Plain and simple. Yahweh's made a way for us to do all things. So, he says it's also needful for him to allow sin, the breaking of his law, to increase, and for that lust to increase, to where men are like stud horses. There are plenty of women on the earth. You don't have to lust after another man's wife. Yahweh says that they will be like stud horses or jackasses. Okay? And let's see. In Jacob 1, verses 14 and 15 says, but each one is tempted when he's drawn away by his own lust and enticed. Then, see, it's not temptation that's the problem, okay? It's when you're drawn away from it and you lust after it. And then when lust is conceived, it brings forth sin. And sin, when it's fully matured, of course, is going to bring forth death. Now, this is what he's talking about in Jeremiah 5:8, that they were like well-fed horses in the morning, each one of them neighing after his neighbor's wife. Okay, and that's what he talks about here, that they're like stud horses, or acting like a bunch of jackasses, okay, instead of doing what Yahweh says. But he says they won't have a brain to think with. Why? Because the adultery and the fornication is screwing up their minds to where they can't think straight. These mutations of these microbes are going in their bodies. And they will lust after someone else or everybody else's possessions, their mothers, their brothers, their sisters, their wives. They have a makeover show, he says, on television now. If a woman isn't satisfied in how she looks, the doctors can cut certain places and tuck certain places. They'll have you looking like a sex goddess in a little while, if you have the money to give them to do it. They showed one of the women who got this done this way. Her son said, I really got to watch myself. I'm actually lusting after my own mother. Of course he is. He says, if you remember, one man even married his own mother. Do you remember who that was? And he was a very strong leader in Christianity. Remember in 1 Corinthians 5:1, the Apostle Shalom got on someone about that. And he says, never let it be heard amongst the saints that someone would take his own mother. Okay? Of course, incest. Of course, that's looked upon as being okay now, because they don't look at the word incest as a bad connotation. What do they call it now? Gender attraction, right? Gender attraction. It's like stupid. You're a bunch of fools. Revelations 13:4. Here we see they worship the dragon. That's what they're doing. They worship the dragon. They serve the dragon. Now highlight this to the end of this paragraph. The way you serve Yahweh is by doing what he tells you to do and going in Yahweh's path. One way you serve the devil is by not eating salt. Not eating honey is another way. And not eating butter is another way. These are some of the little things. Some of the bigger things are fornication and adultery, destroying your mind with these things and then going into the hatred and wars. And people, I remember reading an article. I believe it was in the continent of Africa. And they were saying how that the young people, it was really cool for them. You had to have an STD. If you didn't have an STD, you were a square, you were nobody. It was really cool to have an STD. And so the whole population is infested with people who are carrying these STDs because that was a cool thing to do. It showed that you were actually active and so forth. And what they don't realize is can you see how Satan has blinded their minds to where mankind is actually destroying himself, but he's too ignorant to realize it. He doesn't see it. In his mind, he can't make that connection because his mind is so messed up with these STDs to where he can't make a rational decision to understand that he's doing himself harm. And Yahweh said, keep my law, love yourself so that you can love others. But if you break the laws, then the curses, of course, come. But they don't come without a cause, remember. You make that choice. And that's why Satan's got this whole world deceived. Okay, in verse 69. Now in the world, with the mindset now, you better be careful out in the streets with your driving, because if you dash out in front of someone, it could cause a war. And you can actually be killed. There have been accidents. Not because you could not avoid the accident, but because it was on purpose. Someone got terribly angry, picked a time and ran into him, trying to kill him on purpose, not accidentally. Today we call that road rage, right? Road rage. Wikipedia says, road rage is aggressive or angry behavior exhibited by motorists. These behaviors include rude and verbal insults, physical threats, or dangerous driving methods targeted towards another driver, or even non-drivers, such as pedestrians or cyclists, in an effort to intimidate or release frustration. Frustration. Someone will run over someone because they're frustrated. Then when reality hits, then they realize what they did is just killed someone. It's a different story, right? But now they're stuck behind bars for forever or facing death sentence or whatever, So you can see how Satan torments the mind and the way she grabs a hold of someone so they can't think. Verse 70 says, so this is all in service to this dragon here, which they gave power, notice. They give power to the beastly system. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast? This is Revelation 13:4. They worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? That's found in Revelation 13:4, as it says there. Now, they worshiped the dragon who gave power to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is able to make war with him, right? The word power is number 1849. That's what I want to show you. Notice, it's the power of choice, okay? Power of choice. It's liberty of doing whatever you please. Whatever you please. With regard to who has the power to decide, okay? So it's what you decide. I didn't realize that was cut off like that. But notice, it's the power of rule or government. The power of him whose will and commands are submitted to by others and obeyed. It's generally translated as authority. And it also means universally, okay, which we know is the universal church, right? But this is the power, the authority that the beast has. This is what Satan has given. She has given this rule, this government, that they must, notice, the power of him whose will and commands must be submitted to, okay? And they worship the beast. The word worship means to prostrate oneself. The hand to one toward one in token of reverence, okay? And what do? When the Pope is out there and the bishops, they kiss their hand. They kiss their ring, okay? And that's exactly as it says here, worship the hand, putting the hand out for someone to do so, okay? But they do this, it's a power of choice. You remember? Revelation 13 tells you that they take on the mark. It says they give to themselves the mark. They give to themselves the mark, okay? They willingly take this on themselves. It's not forced upon them, but they take it on. They make, through the power of choice, they take on the mark of Yahweh. And that's why deception is a choice. You choose to be deceived. Okay, you're not forced into it. You choose to be that way. He says, well, we know there is going to be war because the brain has been destroyed. It's been weakened and it's been poisoned. Yahweh says, do not do this because it will take this into your brain and it will cause confusion. Cause confusion. Let me show you the etymology of confusion, okay, is disorder, confusion, shame, okay? It's from the Latin word, it means a mingling or a mixing, a blending, blending of righteousness and evil. It's confusion, disorder. It's a noun of action from a past particle stem of confundere, which means to pour together. What is the witness doing? He's not pouring out. He's pouring out the message, and as a result, the plagues are coming upon the people. Notice it says, see, confound. Well, confound means to condemn or curse. They're living under the curse. What is the curse? The plagues, right? Also to utterly destroy, notice, to crush, to ruin, to disgrace, to throw into disorder. This is what's taking place with the whole world. From Latin, same word. It means to confuse, to jumble together, to bring in disorder, especially of the mind or the senses. Satan has this mind blinded of the whole world. Disconcert, perplex, properly to pour, to mingle, or to mix together. Remember the image? Nebuchadnezzar, the mixture, you just heard about it on Sabbath, but being the clay and iron mixed together. And it won't hold because there's nothing there to hold together. Okay? You can't, and of course that mixing also represented the mixing of the seed of madness, of what the abominations and the religion that they practice. Okay, we got to stop here, but we'll take off here next week on verse 71. Yahweh bless you, men.